Today's video, as you can probably already tell, is something a little bit different because I'm bringing you guys along with me on a job. I'm heading to the Rick Shiels Golf Show podcast studio to take a look at their Blackmagic ATEM setup and help them get the very most from it, so they can not only up their recordings from 1080p to 4K, but also record more content in less time, all without spending a single extra penny on equipment. So if that sounds something like you want to learn as well, keep watching this video.
Rick is a golf professional and has the largest golf channel on YouTube with over 2.13 million subscribers and amassing 15 million views every single month. Around 2 years ago, he started the Rick Shiels Golf Show podcast along with his co-host Guy, and they've been doing fantastically. But they don't think they're getting the absolute maximum they can out of their setup, and they're right. The current setup is 3 Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6Ks, all plugged in via HDMI into an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. They then vision mix the podcast as live and record the 1080p program output directly to a SanDisk SSD. For audio, the Shure MV7 mics are fed to a Rodecaster Pro, and high quality multi-track audio is recorded into its micro SD card. They then take these recordings and sync them in the edit, add some graphics, and export and upload the final version to YouTube.
So Rick, amazing podcast setup, but talk to me about some of the things that you want to improve.
I feel like once we record in the 1080, it just never quite looks as crisp. Like, I feel like with the cameras we've got and the luxury of being able to up the quality, I just want it to make it the best quality, but to really still keep it simple. I don't want it to be too complicated with the edit. We don't want to, because we turn things around pretty quickly. So better quality, same sort of workflow would be ideal.
Okay, so I think the best bet for me to do is go away, check the setup, go into all the settings, and then see how we can improve it. I'll make some settings changes, and then we can compare what you were seeing before versus a new setup.
Sounds perfect.
The first thing that I've actually spotted is quite a common mistake that people make with the ATEM minis. Now, Rick said that he didn't think that the 1080p recording coming from the ATEM was at high enough quality. And I've just gone into the actual settings here in the ATEM software control, specifically in the live stream settings, and I noticed that the streaming quality is set to streaming low. Now you might say, well, why does that matter? It's the streaming quality, not the recording quality. But it does, because the program output of the ATEM Mini actually uses one encoder for both streaming and recording. So whatever you set here in the streaming quality is what will be used also for the recording quality of the program output as well. That means basically, rule of thumb is, if you're just using the ATEM Mini for recording only, not streaming, go into the streaming settings and in the quality, set that to HyperDeck High. That's going to give you the best 1080p recording of the program output that you can get using the ATEM Mini. So that's instantly going to make the quality of the recordings from the ATEM better, but I do want to go a few steps further to make full use of all the Blackmagic kit that Rick's team have here. Firstly, I want to make full use of these Blackmagic 6K cameras, so I'm going to put into each of them these 2 terabyte SanDisk SSD hard drives. And then I'm going to change the recording settings in the camera to record at 6K B-RAW. And that's going to allow us to record full 6K RAW footage on the camera to the SSDs, but also still continue via the HDMI port to send 1080p footage back to the ATEM Mini to be able to cut on there. Now, the other benefits that we actually get from using Blackmagic cameras is the fact that the ATEM Mini sends data back to the cameras. So we get timecode sent to the cameras, so they're all timecode synced, very important for the edit section later. We also get tally light, so that the talent know which camera is on air and which one to look at. Camera control, so you can change things like camera settings and color calibration. And finally, this neat little feature in the ATEM software control, which allows you to trigger the recording in all the cameras just by pressing one button on the ATEM Mini. So it means when you hit record on the ATEM Mini, all of the cameras start recording at the same time as well to the SSDs at full 6K, and it just saves you having to go around hitting the record button on each individual camera. Secondly, I do want to make full use of the ATEM's ISO functionality. Currently, the team is vision mixing the podcast live to save time in the edit, but they're only recording the program output from the ATEM, which means if they do make any miscuts while live, there's no way of fixing that in the edit. So what we're going to do instead is enable the ISO functionality within here, which will actually mean that not only does the ATEM record all the 8 inputs, it also records automatically a DaVinci Resolve timeline file with all of those camera cuts that were made as the podcast was going laid out on a timeline. And that's going to give them a lot more flexibility because they can make any small edits where there were any miscuts. They can also cut to a completely different camera if they want to, if they cut to the wrong camera. It's also going to speed up their workflow in general as well, because those ATEM ISO files, which are recorded at 1080p, can be used kind of like proxy files for the 6K camera RAWs. And I'll show you how that works in just a second. Third and finally, as we've got plenty of these SSDs, disk space isn't an issue. So one of the things that I'm going to do is actually set the recording frame rate to 50 frames per second to see if Rick and the team prefer that more smooth look that 50 frames gives over the standard 25 frames per second. So those are some of the changes that I've made to the recording workflow, but what about the editing workflow to make all of this work? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about storage, because when you're using Blackmagic 6K RAW files, you're going to need a lot of it, and that's where QNAP comes in.
QNAP creates a wide variety of network-attached storage devices. A NAS, as they're known in short, is a bit like a giant hard drive that stores all of your data in one safe and central location, but it's connected to your network, so multiple people and devices can access and work from it at the same time, whether that be from home, in your office, or remotely from anywhere in the world. They offer a wide range of features like 10 gigabit Ethernet and Thunderbolt 3 connectivity for blisteringly fast file transfers, and a whole host of apps too, like my personal favorite, the hybrid backup and sync app, which will automatically take care of regularly backing up your data either locally or to the cloud. QNAP's NASes are scalable and flexible. You purchase the size of the NAS you need and then populate it with whatever hard drive sizes you require. Take my QNAP for example. I've got 5 of Western Digital's Red Plus 12 terabyte hard drives that give me a total of 60 terabytes worth of storage. Plenty for all my video editing projects. I've also fitted 4 Western Digital SSDs to get even faster read and write speeds thanks to SSD caching. I went with the Western Digital drives as they're optimized and specifically designed for use in a NAS enclosure and are tested for 24/7 use. If you want to find out more about my NAS setup and how it has completely changed the way I work, check out my video linked in the description below. There's also a link to QNAP's website below so you can check out their range of fantastic NASes in more detail.
Let's talk about the new edit workflow that Rick's team are going to use to now create these new higher quality 4K videos. And the first thing to say is there's no time wasted collecting SD cards and crashing and copying the files from the SD cards to the computer. Because we are using SSDs, they're actually fast enough to edit directly from. So all we need to do is remove the 3 SSDs from the cameras, remove the SSD from the ATEM Mini, and then plug the 4 of them into our edit machine here. That's already going to be a huge time saver. Another time saver is that we're going to be doing all of the editing inside DaVinci Resolve. And the reason for that is because the ATEM Mini has pretty much done most of the edit for us already. So if I open up DaVinci Resolve here, and this is the timeline that the ATEM automatically creates, you can see we've got all of our camera cuts from when we were pushing the buttons and vision mixing live laid out here on the timeline. And now it gives the team the flexibility where if there was a miscut, they can go in, they can extend or move the edit point, or they can even completely change the clip or the camera that was cut to if they wanted to, which is a flexibility that they didn't have before when they were just using the program output file from the ATEM Mini. The other thing that's speeding us up here is that we're not using the large 6K camera files until the very end when it comes to actually exporting the video. Instead, we're using the ATEM ISO files, the 1080p files that the ATEM created, and treating them a bit like proxies and doing the full edit using those files. Now, these are a lot smaller and actually a lot less data and resource intensive on the computer, which makes our editing process a whole lot smoother as well. At this point, Rick's team can make any adjustments that they want to the timeline, including zooming in or reframing the camera angles. And a quick tip, I actually did a top tips video on this. So if you do want to see how to do that, click the I button in the top right-hand corner and you can check out that top tips video. But they can also add things like lower thirds and other graphics, and also sync their Rodecaster audio as well. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to do that. So actually, I've just dragged in the audio from the Rodecaster to audio track number 2 here. And on audio track number 1, that's the audio coming from the ATEM Mini. And what they did is they just left one of the microphones on the onboard Blackmagics enabled so that audio from the camera was recorded on all of those ISO files and the program output. So there is some audio there. And to sync them, it's super simple because They both have audio from the same space. I'm just going to select both of those tracks, right-hand click, and select Auto Align Clips, and then do that based on the waveform, and DaVinci will do all of the syncing for you. Once the edit is done, to swap out the 1080p recordings for the 6K recordings is actually incredibly simple thanks to DaVinci. 3 steps, let me show you what you're going to do. So you're going to find the 6K recordings on each of your drives, the SSDs I'm referring to here, and you're going to go to the Media tab in DaVinci, and you're going to drag each 6K recording into the Blackmagic RAW folder that the DaVinci timeline file that the ATEM created automatically created that Blackmagic RAW file folder as well. Drag and drop those into there. Once all 3 of those angles in our case are in there, you're then going to go to the cut page. And you can see here we've been working up until this point with our 1080p ISO files from the ATEM. To change that, we're going to go up to the top right hand corner and click this icon here, which is Show Camera Originals. And as soon as we click that, it's going to switch to using the 6K B-RAW files now. The other and final thing that we need to do before hitting export is actually click the button next to it and change the timeline from Full HD to Ultra HD. So we're going, again, setting the timeline to 3840 by 2160 or 4K, and then we're ready to export. To export then, we'll head to the Deliver tab in DaVinci Resolve. And from here, the first things you're going to need to do is actually set the file name that you want to save and where you want to save it to, so set your file location as well. I also, at this point, just double check that the resolution is set to Ultra HD so that the timeline that's exported is in 4K. And then we've got a choice to make. Now, if you've got pretty good specs on your computer, you can actually change the codec to .h.265 and enable Use Hardware Acceleration. And that's going to give you a smaller file size for uploading to YouTube, but it is going to take slightly longer to render. Now, if you don't have great computer specs, just leave that at .h.264 and then you can untick hardware rendering. So that's really the main choice. The other thing I do like to do as well is just open up and go into the advanced settings. And for YouTube, I like to set the color space to Rec 709, just down here, where is it? There you go, Rec 709. And then I also like to set the gamma tag to Rec 709A. And all that does is it just makes sure that the right color space tag and the gamma tags are set for YouTube, and just make sure that the color pops and looks good on YouTube. Then we just need to hit the Add to Render Queue button at the bottom left here, and that will put it in the render queue up on the top right, and then we can just hit the Render All button. Then you're going to want to grab yourself a cup of tea or something, because this export is going to take a while, especially as it's over an hour and a half. But once that's done, we better show the boss and see what he thinks of this new 4K 50 frames per second looking podcast.
Right, so Rick, this is a recording of the settings before.
Okay.
The 1080p settings that you can see here, if we just watch some of that through.
Yeah, you can just tell it's not quite sharp, is it?
You know what this is like. But now if I just switch here to the new 4K, so this is 4K 50 frames per second. Take a look at this.
Wow. Instantly, like, you can tell the sharpness and the smooth. Is it because it's almost like smoother?
Yeah, so we've upped it. You were originally shooting at 25 frames per second. We're basically doubling the frames per second. So it's got that much more smoother, more sports look.
It almost more looks like realistic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It feels more like you are there. It doesn't look as much like you're watching a video. It's smoother, it's crisper. You'll be able to crop in better, won't you, with that?
Yeah. So we're shooting at 6K, but exporting at 4K. So it does mean that you and your editors can crop in, punch in if you want as well.
And the workflow is still
nice
simple?
and easy. Yeah, as simple as we can possibly get it. And although the render times will be a little bit more because you are rendering a 4K footage, the actual edit time shouldn't be increased at all.
Alex, that is honestly,
Pleasure.
Mega. That looks so much better, and I can't wait to see what the comments say when people start watching that, because they'll definitely notice the difference. But in a nice way, in a way that they'll go, yeah, that's quality, that looks and feels better. Well chuffed with that. That's awesome.
Well, there we go, guys. We've taken the Rick Shiels Golf Show into 4K with this awesome Blackmagic setup and sped up their workflow so that it can create more content and at a higher quality too. And if you want to see what the end product looks like, you can check out the Rick Shiels Golf Show channel on YouTube. The link is down in my description below. And check out some of their most recent videos, which should all be in glorious 4K by the time this video gets uploaded to my channel. If you found this video useful, please do give it a thumbs up. Also consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell for more videos just like this. And please do let me know in the comments below if you like this out and about type video where I visit other people who are streaming or broadcasting and take a look at their setups. If you want to see more of that, let me know down in the comments below. I do read through all of them and will reply to as many of them as possible. If you need help on your setup, my email address is on screen now. You can ping me an email, we'll set up a one-to-one consulting session and get that sorted for you. And once you've done all that, guys, I will see you on the next one.